Parliament, workers have been told to go home. Soldiers have entered to protect it. The first time the army has been on parliamentary ground in Egypt.
After nightfall, at this crucial stage, comes a statement from the military. What this means is not clear.
The military has now issued communique number 1, suggests to some that perhaps now the military is in control of some type of hierarchical structure in the government.
And it's interesting to note that President Mubarak isn't in that meeting.
But once that communique was announced, we could see people changing direction, turning back in, more people arriving with food, with blankets, expecting a long night.
Perhaps the most interesting development was the communique that was issued by the military. For many people was a sign that a new beginning of something had transpired, that the military had now entered into a phase where its communications had taken on a different tone. This had been as if they had reset the clock.
I mean, it's an absolutely electric atmosphere on the square at one of the carnivals. People are celebrating a victory which is still anticipated rather than actually achieved. But you get the sense that they want to be here to witness it with their own eyes.
As you look back over the events, you wonder what might have precipitated this and why it's happening this evening. I guess mainly because there was going to be an enormous rally tomorrow, probably the biggest ever, and they wanted to perhaps preempt that.
Egyptian state television said that President Mubarak's speech is expected to be live this evening. Not only is it going to be every Egyptian glued, everyone in the Arab world will be watching this very closely, because if in some way it breaks Egypt from its past, you can rest assured that its reverberations are going to be felt in so many corners of the world, and they will be felt immediately. This situation remains very, very fluid.
We feel like it's our one chance in a lifetime to just get all our demands. We are waiting here until all our demands are heard and done.
There are just over 1,000 die-hard pro-democracy activists here outside Sidi Gada train station in the center of Alexandria.
We are witnessing history unfold. It's a moment of transformation that's taking place because the people of Egypt are calling for change. America will continue to do everything that we can to support an orderly and genuine transition to democracy in Egypt.
It's almost as if President Obama is waiting for the cue from Egypt to know exactly in which direction this is going to take place.
What you're going to see from this administration is a hesitancy to talk in public until President Mubarak makes his speech, because if you look back at the 30-plus years of a relationship with President Mubarak, there are pictures of every U.S. president gladly meeting him in the Oval Office, and there's the talk of all of that tens of billions of dollars worth of aid that went to prop up his government.
It's 19 hours GMT, 9 o'clock in Cairo. Excitement is growing as events appear to be coming to a head.
A handful of Egyptians grew to hundreds, grew to thousands, grew to millions.
We all here are celebrating already. We believe that something is going to happen. We believe that the president, inshallah, will step down.
Well, the only thing I'm expecting to hear from Hosni Mubarak tonight is that he's leaving. Now, my own personal preference, of course, is for him to stay in the country and get prosecuted on charges of treason, murder, and corruption.
I just want to show you what Egyptian state television is showing the nation right now. Did you spot the difference between their coverage and our coverage there? There is no difference. That is quite significant.
Now that state television had changed its tone, AlJazeera, though still legally banned, felt able to name and show its correspondents on screen.
The images that they showed, images of really from a distance. They would show you pictures of the protests to try to give you a sense that they are small numbers. The protests were never really shown in the significance or given their proper editorial weight. And perhaps what you're seeing behind the scenes is the regime slowly, perhaps coming apart by showing you these images to ordinary Egyptians for the first time.
The atmosphere in the square is absolutely electric. People have come in their tens of thousands. There is quite literally standing room only. There's a real sense here that history will be made tonight. But right now, they're already celebrating a victory, which as yet they're still anticipating.
Well, I'm just squeezed, squashed. There isn't a spare place in this massive square right now. The atmosphere here, well, you could describe it like, think of a carnival, which might be premature. There's a feverish anticipation here about what Mubarak is going to say.
By 10:30, when Mubarak, running late as ever, finally takes to the stage, a rare silence descends over Tahrir Square.
You could hear a pin drop once President Mubarak started his speech. Complete silence engulfed the square.
The citizens, the children of Egypt, men and women, I address you today, to the youth of Egypt, stationed in Tahrir Square. I have been a youth just like you.
Mubarak's rambling speech went on for 17 minutes. The longer he spoke, the clearer it became that the gap between president and people was unbridgeable.
I went to war. I won victories.
Suddenly a change in the crowd from attentive silence to deafening roars of go, go.
They are playing with us. They are not dealing with us as an honest government.
Standing here for like 16 days, we just had enough.
Liberation Square erupted in anger and frustration. You thought maybe that people would be demoralized, that people would be deflated, but in reality, it was the complete opposite. People had become much angrier. People had become even more determined.
We started to see the mood turn to anger. Raising the anticipation and raising expectations like he did was very, very dangerous, because those expectations were not met, and all you were left with were thousands, tens of thousands of very angry people.
You could see how the mood just completely altered. People were almost certain they knew what was the next line, because that's what they heard him repeat all throughout his speeches since the protest began on January 25th. You could also see tears in some of the people's eyes, screams of anger, people just breaking down in tears, breaking down, screaming and saying, we cannot believe this.
Immediately afterwards, we started hearing calls for the protesters to make sure that Friday, the following Friday, they get 20 million people to the streets across the country, because it became very personal on so many levels for them. They felt that this was a president who was insulting them, belittling them. His speech was seen very patronizing. Again, that was the tone that this regime fails to understand.
It's puzzling me, really, and at the same time, how it's going to react. I mean, this is very puzzling situation. It's not just fluid, now it's volcanic.
Vice President Suleiman follows on Mubarak's heels.
I call on the youth of Egypt, the youth and the heroes of Egypt. Go back home. Go back to your world.